Hey again, creators and editors. Welcome back to the series on how to get great results out of Vegas Pro. So in the previous video I talked a little bit about full range levels and video levels, or sometimes known as data levels and studio levels. So in this video I want to talk a little bit about how Vegas treats those levels compared to other applications. I'll see if I can show you how this works. Let me just make that a little bigger so we can see what's going on. Alright, so the way other applications work is when they get data that is full range, so this might be graphics, a still image, or in some cases video that has been captured using full range levels. It comes in and the preview shows it in full range, so you get it basically the full range of it. The scopes work in full range as well, but when it actually goes to be rendered out into a video format, so this is all of the standard video formats, whether you're doing QuickTime or MPEG-4, virtually anything you're going to output the video as, export it out as, it gets compressed down into that video range, so 16 to 235, and then when it goes on to the player re-expands it back out and it looks the way it did in the video preview. Okay, so if you had a video range signal, same sort of thing would happen, okay, except in this case it's being detected on the way in. So you've got video range, you can see we're starting at 16 going to 235, it then gets expanded for the preview, okay, and this occurs automatically in these other applications. The scopes are correct, they're also full range, and then when it gets output it gets compressed down the same as before and it gets played back at full range. So again, it's a what you see is what you get kind of arrangement. If you happen to have a signal like this where it's a little bit of both, okay, and this is quite common with video cameras, certainly more recent video cameras, they record what's called super whites, okay, and this is in the video world known as kind of an illegal range. So the range above 235 is still captured by the camera because camera sensors are quite capable of capturing these higher highlights. It's just that the video range is obviously not really designed for them. So these so-called illegal whites, or these super whites in here, are captured, and then when it goes into the application recognizes it as video levels and it displays it all, but it will show these whites as clipped. Okay, so that means that they're crushed, there's no detail left in them. So anything above that 235 level is going to end up being clipped. Now, because you can see that using the scopes and in the preview, you can draw it back in and you can make sure that it's right before it gets rendered out. But if you don't do that, what you end up with is basically those whites possibly being clamped, depending on the footage you're using. And clamped is a little bit different from clipped. Clipped, generally refers to something that can be recovered if you just turn down the brightness a bit. Clamped means that it's gone altogether. Okay, it's literally removed. And the reason why they do that is that a video signal, if it was going off to broadcast, and there was signal up above 235 or below 16, it could very well be rejected. Okay, so in the broadcast world, they are literally illegal ranges, and if there's any data in them, essentially they'll say to you, no, this is no good, you're going to have to re-deliver this video, right? So a lot of applications will simply clamp them, get rid of them altogether to save you going through that stress. If they don't get clamped, they come out and then you go to play it back on, say, YouTube or something like that, and it will just clip those highlights, so they're gone, okay? But it will still give you the same image that you saw back in the preview. Alright, so this is all well and good so far. When you're dealing with Vegas, it works a little bit differently. So Vegas Pro is designed to respect the values that come in, and this can make it a little bit confusing for beginners in particular, but even for people who've been using the software for years, they can get caught out a little bit. So if you have a full range signal coming in and then it goes into the preview, you will see it as a full range signal in the preview. The waveform and the vector scope by default are set to studio levels, okay, which I will show you. And what that means is that they will actually show that it is outside the range of studio levels. Okay, if you know what you're looking for, these will give you that information so you know that you need to correct it. But if you don't really know how to read waveforms and vector scopes, and a lot of people don't, then you won't recognize that. So then the video gets rendered out, and again you can see it's been respecting the levels the whole way through, so it renders it out at full range. You upload it to YouTube and you end up with both clipped highlights and crushed blacks. You end up with an image that is very contrasty, and essentially what YouTube or Vimeo VLC are doing is they're essentially throwing away about 14% of the hard work that you put into your video. So pretty frustrating to get that and then have to go back and try and work out what's going on. If you get a video range signal into Vegas, that may work a little bit better depending on your perspective. Comes in, it gets stretched out for the video preview because of course the video preview is essentially just another player. So it is going to stretch the video to fill the player, but in doing so it's going to respect the value still. So that value here, this black that was at 16, is still going to be displayed at 16, and the white that was at 235 is going to be displayed at 235. Okay, this is not going to stretch them, it's just going to display them. The waveform and the vector scope, however, will tell you that you're on track if you're using the Studio RGB setting, and then when it gets rendered out, you can see that the levels from the original video, if you haven't done anything else to it, will be respected, and when it gets played back, it'll actually play back correctly and look great on YouTube. So this is possibly a little bit confusing because your preview made everything look a little bit grey and washed out. If you have the super white scenario, similar kind of thing, comes in, video preview looks washed out in the greys, but looks right up in the highs. The waveform warns you, possibly, if you know what you're looking for, that there is a little bit of illegal whites going on in there. The signal gets rendered out, respecting the values. It goes into YouTube or Vimeo and gets played back with clipped highlights. Okay, so that doesn't look right either. So you can see all of this makes for pretty confusing editing as far as, you know, getting your color grade right and getting your exposure correct within Vegas. Let me show you if, or let me see if I can show you what this kind of looks like. I'll just bring back the scopes here. All right, so we talked before about this white here, and we can see there is the white at 255. If you look at, say, a full range video clip, okay, so this is video, but it has been recorded at full range, you can see we're going from right down low in the blacks all the way up to high 255s in the whites. Now, if I look at the waveform on this, the standard waveform, that is not the standard waveform, incidentally. The standard waveform looks like this, all right? If you're just looking at that and you don't really understand what these numbers up here mean, the 100 and the 0, you're not going to realize that there is data that is above 100 here and below 0 and is going to be lost when you go to render this out. Okay, so if you don't really know how to read this, that can be a bit confusing for you. Likewise, if you've got a still image, you can see here we've got data below 0 and above 100, but that may not be apparent to you if you don't know what these numbers actually mean. Here's a video that has got, that is correct in the correct range, video range, but has got those super whites that I was talking about. And what you'll notice about this is that if you look at her hat, we might just go back a tiny bit in it. See if I can find a good example. You can look at her hat, it's very close to clipping. In some cases you can see it's clipping, it's sort of got a bit of a flat line going on there. But if I was to actually preview what this would look like on YouTube, okay, and I'll tell you about this, you can see how badly it is actually going to be clipped, because everything that was above this 100 at that point gets clipped. Okay, this tool that I'm using here, incidentally, is called the SEMW Preview extension. It's a free extension. The link is in the description below, and I will talk a little bit more about it in a little bit, but basically allows me to preview what the image is going to look like. If I get something like this, which is a video level clip that has come in, okay, you can see that this is sitting nicely between 0 being black and 100 being white, so that looks pretty good. But the preview, in actual fact, doesn't look that great. It's a bit washed out. I'll show you what I mean. If I grab a level effect and we just drop this on here, you can see how much blacker we could have got that, all right? So that there, with that effect, that is down at the bottom of the Vegas scale by default, all right, and up the top of the Vegas scale. So it looks much more contrasty than it did before. Okay, that was before and after, all right? But it's deceptive, because if I was to do that and make it look, you know, really good in the preview and then go to play it back, it's going to all end up looking way too contrasty, and I've lost all of the black detail and all the white detail because that has been completely crushed out of it as part of that stretch that occurs when the player recognizes that it is a video and goes to stretch it back out to full range. All right, let's get rid of that. So let me show you what this looks like in some of these other applications. We've got the same couple of clips that I was using over in Vegas here. And you can see that this one here, this is the one that had super whites, and her hat was going to be clipped as a result. Oh, there you go. You can see her hat is all clipped there. If I go over to the color grading pane here and we look at it on the scopes, you can see quite clearly that they are all clipped here. So this has automatically brought it in and it's shown us that it's all clipped. So I can just quite quickly make the changes I need to bring that within the range that I want it to. And I can know that any change that I make in here, that's how it's going to look when I go to play it back on a video player, because Resolve, like these other applications, will bring it in at the right levels and then it will output it at the right levels as well. Same thing is true here. Okay, this is a full range image. So in this case, it's been brought in and recognized as full range. So you can see that we haven't got any of the clipping or anything. And in fact, even though it looks like it's all clipped here, that is just because it's not terribly well shot. So it actually is all clipped, but those clips are not recoverable. So this is showing the full range on the scope as well. And then when I go to deliver these out, it will deliver them out in the 16 to 235 range, which will then be stretched out, and you'll end up with a video that looks exactly the same as it does after your grade. So you can see here that depending on what you're working with, you actually need to be quite wary of how you're using the scopes and how you're using the preview in Vegas. Otherwise, you could end up with images that are not really what you expect. So the obvious question is, what do you do about it? And the reality is that it really depends on what kind of footage or graphics you're dealing with, because there are different solutions for different types of images. So the next couple of videos in the series are going to deal with editing of mainly video content or mainly other graphics content, and how you're best to monitor those in the Vegas timeline and then render them out for reliable delivery across a range of different players and online services.